It's Sunday morning with Mark Sainsbury.
Okay, it's a business end of Sunday mornings now, and of course, time to talk to the good Dr. Harold Hillman. And don't forget, check out Harold's website, www.sigmoidcurve.com. And Harold, of course, he's a bit of a business genius. He spends his time advising companies on, how to sort out their stuff. And one of the big issues around at the moment, because, there's all this talk, isn't there, of emotional intelligence, and apparently leaders have to show their vulnerable side.
That's right, Mark.
Harold, I would have thought if you're a leader, the last thing you'd want to be doing is showing your vulnerable side.
Mark, if done well, it actually can instill greater confidence. And since 1995, when an author by the name of Daniel Goleman wrote a best-selling book called Emotional Intelligence, and it really turned the world of management on its side, because for the first time, here was a body of research that was telling us that it's equally important to focus on how to connect with people in the same way that we used to focus on what we would just call smarts, what you know. But now the research really tells us that in order to keep people engaged in the workforce, and more importantly, to make sure that people aren't leaving your company, good, talented people aren't leaving your company, you'd better focus on this thing called EQ, emotional intelligence. And that is, how can I connect better to people where they feel that they can relate to me, and therefore my relationship is as good as it might be.
Yeah, but Harold, you know how these things, that they become fashionable, can I put it like that? All of a sudden the talk is all this and then it's something else. Is this what's going on with this emotional intelligence? Is it just it's fashionable at the moment, in a couple of years' time it'll disappear?
Mark, the research certainly does not suggest that this is a fad. So we've got nearly now 2 decades of research. It's only growing because with Generation X and Y, we've talked about that on a previous program, but with Generation X and Y coming into the workforce, these young folks are wanting to be involved in their input, putting their perspective on the table. They don't want to take over the manager's job, but they do want to have an opinion on things that then they're asked to commit more to. So that's only going to increase. And so it's not a fad. This is something that's real now. EQ is just as important as IQ in business.
Okay, but if we're talking about, your vulnerability, what does that actually mean?
Well, vulnerability, Mark, it's such a long word, and because of that, and I think people are inclined to see it as something soft. I think that's part of the problem. Vulnerability is a part of the human condition. It just simply means that when you begin to take your hands off of the driver, off of the steering wheel, if you will, in the sense of you begin to ease up on needing to be in control of everything. And the more you ease up of needing to be in control of everything, that means you have to trust other people to be able to do things with you and for you. So vulnerability in a work context means that I can pull away from having to be in control of everything and allow other people to sort of step in there and, develop themselves and those types of things. And so it's one of those things for people who like to be in control. Sometimes they're called micromanagers. They like to have their hands on everything, that sense of just being across everything to the nth detail. Workers don't like that. Again, the research is suggesting that people want space to develop, and they need bosses who can be a bit more vulnerable in letting them try some things.
So that means they don't want the perfect boss. You've got to have a few imperfections in that sense. But then you don't want too many.
You're right, Mark. It is, to your point, look, it's hard to relate to a perfect boss. And so this whole thing around vulnerability is, look, managers, just step back from the self-imposed pressure that we put on ourselves to be perfect. And that, it's easier for an employee, one of your team members who's made a mistake, to come in and talk to you and acknowledge that mistake if they believe that you can relate to it. So there is some power around imperfection. But Mark, to your other point, it can go too far. You don't want to play this vulnerability card to the extreme because, it can also erode people's confidence in you if you seem like you aren't able to make decisions or put a stake in the ground.
Oh, well, I guess that rules me out of any of these jobs because I'm just too perfect, I guess. Yeah.
This is right, Mark. We'll use you as a case study.
Hey, good on you, Harold. Harold Hillman, look, don't forget, check out Harold's website, www.sigmoidcurve.com, and the good doctor will be back with us again next Sunday morning.